Hi, everybody. I'm Kimberly. I'm an eternal life student, which simply means human. At the end of the day, that really is the only title that we need. I think people are like walking books, a living library. We each have our own stories to share, and by sharing them together, we can grow stronger. Today, I have a guest who's going to share part of his story. His name is Pete McCollum, and I can't wait to hear what he has to share. Hi, Pete. How are you doing?
Great, great. I'm glad we're talking again.
Yes, thank you so much for coming back. This is your second time with us, right? Uh,
Correct.
the first time we had talked about how gardening had saved your life, but now we're going to go into a different direction, which I'm very excited to talk about and show people a different side of you. So, today's topic is self-destruction to healing and documenting struggles of AUDHD using satire and humor. So, before we get into that, can you explain what is AUDHD?
Sure. It is one of a few current terms. It's a spectrum-related disorder combined with ADHD. Um, Also Asperger's syndrome, but it's been updated. And spectrum disorders, they've kind of zoomed out.
Okay.
And now it's more of a generalized thing. So AUDHD is a more generalized term for a spectrum disorder and symptoms of ADHD.
Okay. Thank you very much for explaining that. And you yourself are familiar with this, correct?
As much as I can be, my diagnosis was now 14 years ago,
Okay.
and studying is always helpful, you know.
Yes.
So what they told me is consistent with what I've read. So I cannot help but agree with the diagnosis, certainly based on the trajectory of my life and the things that I'm able and not able to commit to.
Mm-hmm. So, one thing that I know that we were talking about before was that you were trying to find different ways to cope, right? With going through these type of things. And besides gardening, I've always refer back to the other podcast. You also were writing, and finding, I guess, your voice, finding a way to get it out of you. But how long have you been doing that? I know this isn't something new. You've been
Oh,
writing a
it's a
long time.
significantly sure. I think I wrote my first poem in first grade.
Oh,
I
really?
always I was really big. I found one of my short stories not long ago,
Hmm.
inspired by a television show called Tour of Duty from the
Oh, okay.
1980s. Okay. So I wrote, I guess, maybe the world's first fan fiction based on Tour of Duty when I was 6 years old. So poetry and short stories as early as first grade. Yeah, it was something.
Wow.
Well, it got me out of trouble, as it turns
Hmm.
out, because I was rambunctious and undiagnosable. But for some reason, every time there was a writing contest, I would win. So
Oh,
it got me in
really?
trouble for
Oh,
about a week
wow.
or so. Spelling bees and writing contests got me out of trouble. So not necessarily coping in the early days, but it was
Hmm.
certainly, I got a break from being treated like a problem child. So I kind of honed it because I
Yeah,
enjoyed
no.
the praise and adulation for sure, and the break from torment.
Oh, that's great. And a lot of times some people who don't know how to say it out loud, they still need to get it out. So by putting it down on the paper, it's the same idea. Just get it out, right? You have to just get that out of you, in order to be able to then focus on the next thing sometimes.
There was more to it though, okay? It was in those days, it was performative. I
Hmm.
wanted to show them who I was, wasn't necessarily this rowdy human being who couldn't sit down. I
Hmm.
wanted to show them I was a thoughtful individual. I put great thought into meter and great thought into rhyme. And hey, guess what? This is actually what I'm thinking. Don't let my actions always betray what you think is going through my head.
Right.
And um, that wasn't successful till later. The adults never got it. What Who did get it were my peers. And
Yeah.
were like, you know what? You are crazy clever for a hooligan.
See? So that's where you started to get into the satire and the humor a little bit. Like, would you say it was almost like a hidden message somehow?
I got into poetry just to sort of show a middle finger to the low expectations of me.
Okay, good.
There were always these, once I was diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome, I went from being gifted to like, oh, poor boy.
Mhm.
So that was me flipping them off. Okay, well,
Right.
here's what the poor boy is doing, you know.
Exactly. You're
I'm
showing them.
I'm outperforming your number one person here, and I'm not even caring. So
Yeah.
it wasn't productive in the beginning, but you still, whether you're doing it for spite or some other reason, you're still practicing. So
Yes.
you can't help but get good at it. And over time, well, I never really stopped. I never
Hmm.
stopped journaling. I never stopped writing poetry. I never stopped taking my thoughts to the page because nobody seemed to be listening. Nobody,
Hmm.
whenever I did express it, I suppose it didn't come out correctly. And I just
Hmm.
felt like people reacted to me on paper so much better.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. And like I said, I wasn't teasing. It got me out of a ton of trouble.
Hmm.
I was like the number two ad salesperson for the yearbook staff senior
Oh,
year. But
wow.
I was also number one at pranks, disassembling a water fountain or skipping
Right.
class, you know. So it kind of was like, I know you don't expect that much of me, but yearbook staff was the final middle finger. Like, look at what I can do. You know,
Exactly.
I'm not even
Yeah.
trying, and look at what I can do. So once I lost that negativity, yeah, it finally became something positive because now I've got half a dozen completed or almost completed books. And
Yes.
I accidentally became a writer.
Uh-huh. You see?
I don't know.
So, speaking of books, I know that you did mention you do have a bunch of them in the works and some are completed. Can you tell us some of the titles of
Well, what I just completed was a huge endeavor, but it's a pair of books called The Ross Letters,
them? Hmm.
and it's 16 years of letters that I wrote to a friend
Okay.
where I was anything. In the beginning, I actually made fake characters because I
Really?
didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to write something every day. First of all, it was an exercise of like coping with boredom. I had
Okay.
just been separated from the army. I had just started at a community college. I was starting my life over and I felt like a kid and I was
Hmm.
very childish on paper, but I wanted to have an art project I could commit to.
Yeah.
And over 16 years, you know, that it definitely evolved. So after 16 years, I was in one of my low points and I looked through the letters and I said, you know, these kind of tell a story. These tell exactly where I've been through journal entries, very
Mhm.
candid journal entries. And if I do a tiny bit of editing here and there and I pull out these letters and tie them all together, this actually tells my story.
See, and you didn't even know you were doing that, right?
That's why it came out so nice
Hmm.
because it wasn't scripted. It was
Hmm.
supposed to chronicle my self-destruction and it instead became overcoming and a really hopeful
Wow.
future, you know? And
Yeah,
that
no,
was the unintended byproduct for sure because I was determined to be rude. I was determined to be cynical. It was the
hmm.
same thing. Look at what this poor boy can do. Look at this satire. Ooh, I'm making fun of you.
Right.
But then it was like, okay, I'm 29, I'm 30, I'm 31. Gosh, this being a jerk takes a lot of energy. I'm starting to
It
like
does,
get tired of
right?
doing that. Maybe I should just start talking, you know? And
Right.
that's again, once I dropped the idea of publishing it, well, yeah, it took on a life of its own and it became I lost family members. I had nobody to talk to,
Really?
so I talked about it in the letters. I
Yeah.
talked about unresolved problems. It went from like kind of crude jokes and silly nonsense to make myself laugh to deep
Right.
personal reflections. And it ended on the right note too. Holy crap,
Yeah.
that wasn't planned either. It ended on a perfect note, and it it was just the editing process.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to do everything myself the first go around, and
Uh,
it drove me mad. But
I can't even imagine.
I met a proofreader at the end, and she was just trying to
Okay.
be involved with something, and like, do you want to take a look at it? And she ended up really enjoying it. Oh, I
See?
wrote something good. Okay. So now it's ready to debut. I'm still super timid about it because I worry that people are gonna construe it as something that it isn't. All right, it is
Mm-hmm.
masked as satire, and it is masked as me making jokes and making fun of life
Right.
and making fun of people and poor outlook on life. All
Mm-hmm.
right, but you gotta hang in there.
Right.
You gotta hang in there. If you're in 2006, you're like, oh, these letters are a little rude. Yeah, it goes on for 16 years. Be patient.
So your letters, you actually got to see yourself kind of grow up over the years too. That must have been interesting to go back and look through it and see, and remember all the different changes you went through.
There is one particularly funny thing. There's
Yeah.
one particularly funny thing. You're right, though. You get to see growth. Actually, around 2018, around the midway point, I pointed
Hmm.
that out. Like I'm
Oh,
watching
really?
myself change on paper. I actually had a really, it was the first time the Ross letters became self-aware, as if, hey, maybe I will
Wow.
publish this one day. And I looked back and I foreshadowed so much of my life. But one of the things I foreshadowed, I was complaining about dating in a letter in
Okay.
around 2007. And I
Hmm.
said, I've always wanted to marry a woman from another country.
See? How did that turn
I
out?
married a Thai woman. Not only
And
did I
where do you
marry a Thai
and where do
woman,
you
I
live?
moved to Thailand to do it.
See?
So it's incredible how
You
that was
predicted it,
truthful. It
right?
was a truthful letter, but yet it's so in such so a letter and maybe like 2019, I said, oh my God, am I a genius? Did I predict my own life?
You
So
start
it is
writing more things in
self-reflective
there, right?
as well. Maybe I should write something about winning the lottery.
Right.
But you're correct, though. Watching myself grow and change is what it turned into.
Hmm.
Because then it was like, okay, do I keep the spirit of the book, or now do I become grown up Pete and lean into it? Well, guess
Yeah.
what? Grown up Pete was really boring, and I don't think I'll ever fully lose that person that needs to have fun. And you know why I'll never
Yeah.
really stop being that guy, which is
That's part
the
of you.
book ends on that note. The book
Oh,
ends
yeah.
on think like, yeah, I've grown up and I got to lean into this, but I'm still me.
Yes. No, that's perfect. And that's the wonderful thing of you got to look back, see all the different things that you've changed. Even like when you first started to read it and you're younger and you're a little more feisty and you're trying to show everybody you're independent, right? Mind your
Feisty
business.
is a
I know
good
who I
word.
am. Yeah, that's a good word, right? Um, then you start to grow up and you start to change into all these other things. You meet new friends too. I'm sure that became part of the stories as well. Um, it's beautiful actually. You're looking at your life through like a history book of your own writing. If it's more than just a journal because it's artwork to me. The way that you're describing it is some people are going to go and they're going to read it and they're going to be like, oh, that's pretty good, right? Um, and then there's going to be someone that's going to go, wow, that's so creative. And they're going to be able to dig deep into the meanings behind certain things that you say, certain quotes that you're putting in there, and they're going to see the layers that you have and not just the simple, like, that's a good book. They're going to have to probably reread it a couple times to see what else is hidden in there, to figure it out and figure out who is Peter, you know?
I welcome both readers because I had a
Yeah.
friend I've known since 5 years old. It's Peter. I haven't read a book in 10 years. All right.
Hmm.
And I read both years right away. I'm not expecting him to find foreshadowing and imagery, but if he's gone through it more than once, then my job is done. All right. And
Exactly.
then
Yeah,
if the literature nerd says, now hang on, I see what you're doing here. Your repetition
exactly.
of this theme. I can reach them both because I have a lot of relatable struggles that I speak
Hmm.
very plainly about.
Yeah.
There's one letter that said all it says is today a teacher fell down the stairs and I laughed. Now,
I know I shouldn't have laughed, but but I get
see,
it.
I told you, relatable.
Right?
Relatable.
Exactly.
Yes, it demonstrates a lack of maturity. And hey, guess what? I put it in there to demonstrate a lack of empathy. But at the same time, come on now, you laughed.
Everybody
It
knows.
is relatable. You don't need to edit
Yes.
that out.
No, it's true.
The teacher was fine. But
Oh, well,
at the
that's
same
important.
time,
No, nobody was harmed in the writing of that book.
but
Right?
a
No
letter
teacher
could
was
be,
harmed.
at the same time, a letter could be examining mortality. A letter could be
Hmm.
examining forgiveness. A letter could be talking about later letters, my trouble adjusting in Thailand and
Hmm.
how everything is unfamiliar and I'm the one really tiptoeing and still failing, you
Right.
know? So
Yeah.
above all else, it is secretly it is about AUDHD and coping. I didn't receive my diagnosis until 2010. So when you're reading,
Wow.
be aware of that, that there's a turn. Once I become aware of AUDHD, there's a turn in how I speak.
Definitely. I mean, you start to identify a whole new side of you. So, I'm sure just getting a little bit of that identification within yourself to be like, wow, this makes sense,
Well,
right?
first it becomes overcompensating because first you're
Right.
a little prideful about it. First you're a little
Mm-hmm.
bit because I
Because you got
show
an
you warts
answer,
and all.
right?
All
Yeah.
right, exactly. I show you warts and all because otherwise, how are you going to be able to see progress? So
True.
I show you what a vain little shit I became once I was in graduate school and realized maybe I wasn't wrong. There's a
Right.
period of overcompensation when I got my diagnosis. We
Hmm.
talked about it before, but it's chronicled as well. That's
Yes.
I don't care at all about the early ones where I'm just blah blah blah. I'm being funny and that deep. What I
Right.
care about is that small portion when I was arrogant as hell. That's the only part I'm ashamed of is
Really?
my head's a little swollen for a couple of letters and fortunately life brings it back down to its normal size.
But you know what is real? And that's what matters,
I
right?
hope that's
You're
what people
showing them raw,
appreciate.
you're showing them real, you're showing them yourself. You know, you may be showing it a little bit differently with a satire or a humor, but the person who can look deeply in it and look through it and see you, what you're really trying to say. Sometimes people say that someone who might be upset likes to joke. They like to laugh because they don't want to feel what they're
Must be,
feeling.
I must be
Am I
upset
right?
all the time. God, you're right
Right?
though. And you know what? But that's a sign of a person trying to move on.
Yes. Trying to heal. Exactly. And because instead of just sitting there and dwelling, they're trying to get to the light. They're trying to get to the happy place. They're trying to feel again, right? So that, your
You
book.
know, God, that you bringing that up is another important point. Some days the Ross letters were, I'm not dead yet.
Yep, exactly. No. Sincerely, people need to understand what others are going through. Everybody's different, and they don't realize that people are fighting these inner battles, right? And you're giving them a little peek inside with your letters to
Just
show
in
them,
case I didn't make it. See, we talked about this. Just in case I didn't make it, I wanted people to see I had a little bit of substance and I
yeah,
wasn't just a jerk.
see? And these letters are a way that you can show everybody, and it's not just these letters. How many years did I hear you say you were working on this? It hasn't just happened.
17, I just finished it up and
Exactly. This has been
I
a
have a few more to
long
give.
journey for you, a long journey. You've got many books, many poems, you've got these letters. You have so much to share other people to show them, a different side. Yeah, in the beginning, you might be self-destructive, but you actually can find a way to heal. And in the beginning, you might be a little salty, right? A little mad
Well,
at the world and stuff like
yeah.
that. But then, you know, you might actually be able to find out who you are and figure a different way. And I think that's still part of your journey. You're doing that right now because you found out kind of
Well,
who you are, right?
that's another good point, all right? Because we were talking and I told
Yep.
you that I had to pull out a letter that was unusually mature, right?
Yes. Hmm.
It was that letter because I would periodically go through them. I'd save it for a few years though, because you got to understand, I'm watching people die over and over again when I'm assembling this thing. I'm losing these
Right.
people over and over and over. I'm going through the buildup, I'm going through the aftermath. One of the
Yeah.
first times I looked at my letters, looked back, it was probably 2012 where I compiled everything. I actually
Mhm.
typed them all out and compiled them. And it was this odd letter in 2007. It was just so out of character and thoughtful.
Oh, wow.
That's when I was like, you were okay all along.
See? You did have it. You just didn't realize it. That was it. Once you started to let go some of that anger, you were able to be like, you know what? Maybe I can heal. Maybe I can do something other than have to fight against the world. True?
Yeah,
So I think one of the best things that I like when I talk with you is that you're trying to show other people they're not alone and that there is things that they can do to help heal, and you're showing them yourself as evidence, right? That even yourself
yeah,
went through all of
sure.
that. Right.
Well,
And
because
it's
there
not
is
going
a
to happen
bigger,
overnight, right? It's going to take time. It takes a lot of time, and you may have to go through it a couple different times. But would you say all that struggle is finally
oh,
getting
sure, because
worth it?
there is no point where things are okay in the book. What
Right.
is okay is what starts being okay is my attitude. The world is
Hmm.
constantly on fire. It just learn to cope.
Exactly.
All
Like that's
right.
it.
And that I don't ever want to make false promises to people that I just rode off into the sunset. God, no. What do you think? My
Right.
problems just ceased? The older
Hmm.
you get, the more ADHD weighs on you because there's still things expected of you. So
Yep.
the
Very much so. When you're older, there's even more responsibilities. And now
but
that
you
you're
can. The
aware,
message is you can, sure.
right. And now that you're aware of it, now you're like,
Mhm.
okay, what do I do now? Right?
You
Like,
see me doing that in real time.
yes.
Like I never really know the next step. I'm like publicly weighing my options, and
Hmm.
not exactly sure what to do next, but I know based on this and based on this, and I'm trying to show that also adulthood is not doomed to be dull.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
doomed to be boring and monotonous. My adulthood has been many things, but absolutely not boring.
No,
So
definitely. So we were just talking about how adulting really doesn't have to be that hard, right?
I mean, it's about your outlook. What I
Yeah.
hope is that the letters in the later years do reflect sort of, okay, this is kind of a drag, but I'm still having fun. And you can still
Yes.
poke fun at what's going on around you. And because I started to see life through the Ross Letters lens, you got to understand, after 16 years, I had a roommate who asked me like how to become a writer.
Hmm.
And what a strange question, but my advice was live the book.
There you go.
And I
Exactly. That's it.
began living life in a manner that's like, okay, I need something to write about. I was agoraphobic, and then all of a sudden I found this loophole to my agoraphobia. Like, well, I need a letter. I need to go do
Right.
something. So that was actually in a weird way tricking myself to get out of the house too.
That's
But
that's smart.
I want people to be encouraged by that. It's not the end all. Receiving a
Right.
diagnosis, it's not a death sentence. You can still live your life and you can still enjoy yourself. And I hope
Yes.
that people get some encouragement from that, certainly.
Definitely, and the more that you are talking about it and letting people know they're not alone, they have AUDHD as well, that, they too have a voice. They too can speak out. A lot of times people feel like they're on the outside. And, you were even mentioning how because you feel like that sometimes you're the one who actually finds the other people who might be considered on the outside and befriend them, or you see them, and I don't mean just with your eyes. You feel them, you understand what they're going through, what they're feeling, because you yourself have gone through something similar, right?
Well, I mean, you're far more accurate than I think you realize, too, because one of the other things that got me out of trouble when I was younger was volunteering in the autistic classes. And I
See.
actually found that I really enjoyed helping people with Down syndrome and things of that nature. And
Mhm.
it went once again from getting myself out of trouble to like, wait a minute, I'm useful here.
See.
I'm wanted. I'm needed. These people are happy to see me. And you know what? I do find people who are on the outside, and I do let them know that I see them. And it's not just a charity mission or anything.
No.
It's just,
And
hey, guess what?
understanding.
I'm having fun. Okay. And you
Yes.
can too. Just you for a person who's constantly alone, and I am,
Hmm.
the journals cut that feeling out a little bit because in a way it's a performance too. I'm sort of
Yeah,
performing for the book.
of
Some of the things,
course.
because there are little author's notes too, and I'll let you know, okay, today maybe I was being obnoxious, with the benefit of the
I
hindsight, I'll explain
like
to
that.
my intention. But at the same time, what seeing what's going through your own head may be beneficial to you. Don't cower at it.
Exactly.
Just ask yourself what's going on. I did
Hmm.
cower at it when I looked back at some of the earlier thoughts, and some of them are gone
Yes.
and have been burned or whatever.
Right.
At the same
Yeah.
time, at the very least, what you said before is, hey, progress has been made here.
Exactly. And you can actually see it. Like
Notice
it's
the absence
tangible.
of
You can touch
F-bombs.
it, you can see it,
Yes.
you can read it. So like, oh wow, look at that. I really did do that. I really did go to the next level and learn past this thing, you know? And not so much, you know what they say? They say in the beginning you're learning, right? The student becomes the master, right? And something like that. So you yourself were learning all along, and now you're trying to show others and teach them and pass on what you've learned, right?
Well, I believe I'm just as surprised as a lot of people that I made it this far as in adulthood, but well, it's my obsession with those herbs that we talked about in that
Yeah.
last conversation, why I got this smooth skin and everything. But it should also encourage people to want to stick around. I'm
Yes.
proof that you don't have to completely fall apart,
Hmm.
that you can
And
even
there's,
physically heal you know the diet and the exercise isn't for vanity, it's to defy what's been chasing me. All right.
yes.
to being on Ritalin from the time you're 4 years old, you're kind of okay, the clock's ticking, and
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be faced with things later on, whether you like it or not. Being aware of that,
Yeah.
fortify yourself and get ready. And see, I'm not the kind of person to sugarcoat the potential bad outcomes, but what I can do is help you with it. I can walk you through it, and I
Yep.
could talk trash about your enemies if you need me to do it. It's just my
Just
thing
send
is
you a
just
message,
don't
you'll
stop
get them
moving.
good.
Exactly. But my thing is don't stop moving. Just don't stop moving.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep growing, keep building, you know, see what's next because that's what you're gonna find. And behind that door is a new version of you, something that's waiting. You don't know what's waiting for you yet. So you gotta keep going, right?
And
So
journaling's rewarding anyways. You know,
yes.
it
Yeah,
is.
it's gonna move with or without you. True. It doesn't stop. So you might as well keep going. Right?
You have the time to catch these things. One of
Yes.
the craziest parts about the letters is the self-awareness
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that I really am doing this as a project of self-betterment. And amidst all the complaining, every now and again, there's this just tiny grain of positivity
See? You
talking
were
about growth.
fighting. You were fighting for
Sure,
it, right? You could
sure.
see that there was that piece of you just reaching for it. So,
Perhaps
and
it
look,
was because of the journals.
yeah, you had to get it out. And then when you finally did, you got to actually see it. Sometimes, unless you read it or hear it, you don't even realize what's going on in your head.
But
True?
not only that, not believing in your own strength.
Yes.
Looking back and saying, wait a minute, I know that you've written a book about that, but you got to remember, like the Army book, I've written on it. I've worked on that for 15 years too.
See?
I've been writing it so much that I forgot that I lived that
Yes.
and that, hang on, you need to be a little bit proud of yourself, maybe a little prouder than you've been. Here's the evidence. You've got this, right? These thousands of pages right in front of you
Yep.
showing you where you've been and how far you've come. And that if that's your only motivation, there it is, because that's a wonderful motivation, is it not?
Exactly. Yeah, you can leave a little piece of you behind with it, right? You're leaving your thoughts, you're leaving your message.
You're setting the record straight.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody can take that. That's
Poetry
yours.
was always me setting the record straight, Kimberly. Poetry
Really?
was always saying, I know I'm frustrating. I don't understand myself, but this is what's inside. Can y'all
Mm-hmm.
focus on this poem and not on the zit-faced angry kid punching his
Aw.
air? You know?
Yeah. So,
Because if
okay.
you talk to anybody, they will bring up probably my writing from those
Oh,
days. If
yeah.
you talk to a teacher, I am notorious for this poem about the Easter Bunny, and not in any bad way. Some
Right.
people have said, no, that is one of the best things I've ever written.
Oh, wow.
So it was just a parody. I was being silly, but it was the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. It was a contest. It got me some attention for some reason.
Right.
So a lot of people who talk to you or talk about me would say, God, yeah, he was always writing something funny or writing
See,
poetry.
they knew. And now you can be like, yeah, and now I have all these books, right? You can
Well,
show them that,
I'm ready when everyone else is. I
yes.
probably want to do some short stories and poetry. That's my next one. The
Oh,
Army
good.
book is too big. I even have a
Yeah.
TV show to go with that one, and it's so big. I'm not even ready for it. I want to
It's
fast
still in
forward
the
to cat.
works, right? It's in the works.
Well, it's in the works for whoever's got a, big enough advance for me. But Cats, Punk Rock, and Carmen San Diego is the one I want to fast forward to because that's where I confront AUDHD head on, and
Oh, wow.
it's not metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
it's not satire. This time it's gonna be
The real deal.
ridiculing the specialists a little bit,
Yeah.
but at the same time the temporary relief you get from these diagnoses, and say, ah, now that we know
Finally.
what's wrong with me, we can fix me. How terrible is that to grow up that
Yes.
way? But I'm confronting it. And again, I just want to encourage whatever I'm starting, because I call my style sincerism.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, I'm parody of parody is sincere. I grew up in the 90s,
Exactly.
Beavis and Butthead. I'm over satire. For the love of God, I'm over satire. No, this is satire of satire, which is sincere. So I call my
Mm,
style sincerism. So if anything, don't let me be the number one. Let me be the founder and let somebody else do
yes,
it better than me.
that's great.
I'm the guy who invented it. Now y'all go do something better with it.
Exactly.
That's
See?
it. Punk rock is headed in
Done.
this direction now. I'm the new president. Now let's do this.
Do it. So, okay. Do you happen to have that one book that
I got my
you had?
books.
Do you want to
Yeah.
show, you want to hold it up?
All right. This is book one. This is the Ross letters.
Oh, look
16
at that
years.
picture.
This is me and
I
Matt
love
in
it.
Georgia.
That's great.
On a little bender there. Yeah. And the second one is the Ross letters, a deeper dive. This is
Oh, wow.
my friend sent
Great.
me a picture when he got the book. And so he took a picture of himself in his bathtub. So I kind of used that. Good grief. This is book two. I got to
I
write
love
a book
it.
around this picture now. Um, Now, it was
That's
always
too funny.
planned two books, but I guess that was the justification. So the first book is more the early days and
Hmm.
setting up for the transformation. And the second book is just deeper conversations
Yeah,
and hints at what I was doing in the first book, because I'm pretentious and I leave Easter eggs everywhere. Which again, if I
yes,
wasn't writing for other people, then technically I'm not pretentious, right?
true, true.
Okay.
Well, hey,
But
Easter
I'm into
eggs are
punk
always
rock,
fun to try
I'm
to
into
find
music.
anyway,
Right.
right?
And it's just hopefully something that keeps you engaged. Uh,
Definitely.
increases the replay value, perhaps.
Yeah.
But even the cover though, when I uploaded the photo, it was a little bit blurry. And I actually got a flag from Amazon saying, all right, the
Mhm.
cover's too blurry. And I said,
That's how you
fine.
want.
Exactly. Why? And why do you think? Why do you think?
It just did.
No, memory. Foggy memory. That's why I
Ah,
wanted to keep it, because memories are
really?
not clear.
Wow.
Well, Amazon, tee hee hee, they tutted at me a little bit. No, I'm
Right.
dead serious. I was dead serious. Please take the flag off because I want it a little bit blurry. So
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay, let's see.
No, but
So,
that's
okay.
a little something just as an extra. Every piece was given consideration. You need to understand, 17 years, every line, every piece has been given consideration. So do not treat this as a mere tome. So
Yes. Exactly. I mean, you've put your life into this. It is you,
quite
actually,
literally, Kimberly, quite
in many
literally.
ways, not just your story, but your talents, your writing, your humor, your strength, your healing. I mean, what more could you want in a book? Seriously, think
I mean,
about
that's
it.
what I said. So we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. So, what we'll try to do, I'm going to start to wrap up the podcast, but what I do want to do is, we're going to try to find a way to tell them where they can get this book if they're interested, and future
Oh,
books as well.
sure.
So, whether they message you or you give them links and things like that, we'll discuss that and we can put it in the comments. Okay?
No problem.
And again, this book could be read in many ways. It could be the person who just wants to read it and laugh and have humor, but they don't realize how deep it goes. And then you can have the other person who's looking for those Easter eggs. They're looking for the deep meaning behind it, and they want to get to know your story itself. And all are welcome for that, you know. That's the beauty of it. It has layers upon layers. So each person will be able to find something that they enjoy.
Hopefully. I mean, I am reaching out through this. This is me introducing myself to the world after hiding for
Yes.
40 something cough years.
No, that's the best kind. The one who's been kind of hidden and they finally get their voice and they get to talk about it. They have a lot to say. And usually it's stuff people haven't realized they too have experienced and never said out loud,
Well,
right?
that's also, like I said, I sure hope this prompts other people to do it. And
Yes.
again, for the publishers, she's correct. I do have a lot to say. You will not run out. You will not run
Oh,
out. I'll send you
I
my
know you will
folder.
keep on writing. So that's wonderful. So I just wanted to say thank you again for joining me. And I know I'll probably have you back again because you'll have more things to write about and you'll have other things completed. So I'm sure we'll be hearing about those as well. But thank you very much for sharing
Yeah,
this
thank
with
you as
us.
well.
All right. You have a great day.
You too.